One of the best things about my job is some of the training opportunities that come up. And recently I attended a training that was called Dyadic Developmental Psychotherapy. And without getting into the details of it, it mainly centered around communication between children and their caregivers and kind of what can go wrong when that interactions kind of aren't the best. Big part of it was a type of framework that parents were encouraged to adapt when dealing with their children that maybe displayed really aggressive and difficult behaviours to manage. And what I thought I'd do is make a kind of reflection style video about this attitude and how I feel actually it can be applied to everybody. If everybody adopted this framework, I think it could lead to much better communication and interaction and just general relationships, perhaps with your colleagues, everyone. I can't really see any situation where it might not come in useful sometimes, especially in those moments where you're struggling to know how to approach a situation or a conversation. So it's called PACE, P-A-C-E. And yeah, I'll run through each of the letters, have a bit of reflection on each of them, and hopefully there's something of value if you are someone who does struggle with, or in the past has struggled with conversations that are difficult to have. So the P stands for playfulness, and obviously that makes a bit more contextual sense when you're thinking about it's between caregivers and children, but playfulness can go to anybody, and what it really means is that you are attuned to the person that you're speaking to. You've met them at their level. So if let's say you're in an argument with your friend and they're very hyped up and they're very concerned, animated, if you're monotone, if you're flat, then already it's not going to be a productive conversation. Unlikely, because already from just a visual standpoint, you're on very different levels. I'm not saying you match their level, because that's when situations can become quite uncontained. I think for some people there's often a tendency to, you hear people, you hear what they say, and it registers, but maybe you don't show it on your face or you don't show it in your body language. So being a bit aware of that you're attuned to how they're feeling, can help us get onto a bit of an even footing. And obviously children especially, if they are kicking off and you kind of are able to put a bit of humour into the conversation, they'll probably react quite nicely to that. So being mindful of how attuned we are to somebody, whether or not we are kind of at their level or they've been able to come down slightly to where we'd like to be, where we feel comfortable communicating. The A in PACE stands for acceptance. And quite often, and I know I've been guilty of this in the past, we want to jump straight to the problem solving. What can we do to fix the situation that we're in? What can make that conversation much more effective is to kind of accept someone's feelings, or accept that what has happened, the situation they are in, has made them feel a certain way or do a certain thing, within reason, of course. So if we can accept that somebody has reacted a certain way, I think the hope is that person's defensiveness, anxiety to justify themselves will hopefully come down. And because they're not battling with that as much, they are able to have that kind of meaningful conversation that's a bit more around the problem solving. So if we're attuned and they believe that we have accepted kind of where they are emotionally or kind of literally, depending on the situation, then we can move on to the next part, which is C, and that stands for curiosity. Curiosity is your opportunity to show that you are really interested in understanding what it's like to be the other person in this situation. So you've accepted the situation, now you want to understand it. And again, you can only imagine how good that must feel for somebody to believe the person they're talking to actually understands them. And you know what, see if the situation isn't one that can be understood from someone else, then just the attempt at being curious, of trying to understand, can make that kind of bond or that kind of interaction feel a lot more authentic, a lot more genuine. The person feels heard, they feel understood, and they're definitely a big step closer towards talking about that. And the last part then is empathy. When they have been able to articulate and they feel heard, they feel seen, if you show empathy, then it will feel a lot more genuine than what it would be if you hear about a situation and you jump straight to "I'm sorry." For some people that won't, or I'm sorry you're feeling that way, or I'm sorry the situation has done that to you. If you are attuned to where they are, if you accept them for what they've done, for how they're feeling, if you've made a genuine attempt to be curious and understand their situation, then they're going to buy into your empathy a lot more. And hopefully that difficult situation, conversation, feels a lot more manageable because they believe that you are feeling what they're feeling. And when that attunement is made, then the foundation needed to problem solve, to reflect, to plan ahead for the future is really strong, and those conversations can happen. So, a wee summary: P, playfulness; A, acceptance; C, curiosity; E, empathy. If you want to know more about this kind of mindset, this attitude, this framework, there's a man called Dan Hughes who's responsible for that dyadic developmental psychotherapy that I mentioned at the start. I'll have a link below in the comments just to highlight some of his work if you want to learn more about it. But yeah, that's the framework. And what I'd love for people to take away from this is that idea of attunement. When we know somebody really well, there is the chance that we kind of already know how to help them, and they probably know that we know how to help them. But when that help is given and it's not easily received, that can feel so frustrating. But again, between parent and child, between partners, between close friends, between colleagues, the framework helps us not jump to that end point too quickly. The framework helps us go through a set of steps that builds that foundation for meaningful and productive conversations to be had. It's something I really wish I knew about in my teaching days, because I think as a teacher, you do fight fires, you are problem solving all day long, you're trying to give people the tools to manage situations in kind of fast and fluid situations. But actually, very quickly going through the pace situation, you can imagine that somebody comes to you with a problem, you have the reaction that you think they feel is appropriate for that. You accept what's going on, you hear them, you believe them, and then you're curious, you ask a couple of questions, find out some more, then you show the empathy. If you jump in straight with the empathy, I think there's a temptation for people to not really feel heard. They'll just think, oh, you're just saying that because how can you know how badly I'm feeling without understanding the situation so much? Go through the PACE framework, and then those conversations can be really productive. And although I'm kind of speaking at length here, it can be 30 seconds. It can be an interaction that's over really quickly, but still follows that PACE framework. And what it does for the person that's quite often having to give the support is that it can take away some of that frustration and not knowing how to word it, how to go about it. And it gives a really nice kind of map to have some really difficult but helpful conversations. Let me know below if you know of any situations that the kind of PACE framework would be useful in, and I'll see you on the next video. Cheers.